Elected to the Seminole County Commission in 2020, Commissioner Herr serves as the Executive Vice President of Highland and serves on several boards, I was pleased to see. Leadership Seminole, Women's and Girls Cancer Alliance, the Seminole State College Foundation, the Central Florida Expressway Authority, Foundation for Seminole County Public Schools, and of course, is the past chair and board member of the Seminole County Chamber. So Commissioner Herr, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I appreciate that. Most of those are past boards given my schedule of current, but I did retain Leadership Seminole and serving on the Rescue Outreach Mission as well. And I point that out because that is the only homeless shelter that we have in Seminole County. And I have made a commitment to continue to serve on that board. I serve at the will of the county chairman, but the turnover in county board members on that particular board has left it a little bit vulnerable. So it is not one that is often sought out by a county commissioner, I can tell you that. But I am committed to staying on that if they'll have me. So I would also be remiss if I didn't start this conversation with a huge thank you to everybody that's on the phone for your role in keeping our community moving forward during what I think is the craziest time any of us have ever lived through. A big shout out to Tina Calderon and all of the other school board members for just having the fortitude to stick it out. I mean, if you've not heard about their board meetings, it's a lot. It's just crazy. To the hospitals for the work that you're currently doing that we hoped you would never have to do, and for all the work that happened in the first phase of this, and for acknowledging that it's going to go on and that we have staffing shortages and that, at this point, there is end in sight, but that sight is pretty far off. I would also say that to the businesses that are on the phone, just keeping the doors open is huge, and managing, your HR departments are going through a time where they're dealing with things they never thought they'd have to deal with. So I start with all of that to show my appreciation for you all that are on the phone, but I also say it to say that if people like us can come together and not manage from the extremes, we should all try to have that happen every single day in our lives and not get sucked into the extremes of politics. So I'm gonna, while this is extremely heartfelt, my garage door just went up and I have dogs and I'm not sure what's about to happen. So I'll end there by just saying that, heavens to Murgatroyd, let's stop arguing over what's right. There's no right and there's no wrong. Let's start with that being the premise. Let's come at every single issue with the first step being seeking to understand and appreciating that we can learn from whatever the other person's position is, and maybe we'd all be better off. So that's how I come to the county commission. It is not always easy, but I start every day with understanding that I learn less while I'm talking than I do while I'm listening. So with that, I'm going to try to share my screen and you'll figure out how much I've learned. So I'm getting a message that says the host has disabled participant screen sharing. So I'm good with not sharing it. If we can't figure it out, I'll just speak from it.
Yeah, Ben, can you enable it?
I can, just one moment.
Okay, thanks.
We also have Grandma here who can't hear, so her voice is loud. So if you hear chatter in the back.
You should be able to do it now, I believe, your co-host.
So she is, she's 89 and whatever she does goes in my household.
Very fair. She's earned it.
Yeah. All right, so you tell me when you can see it. Are we there?
Good.
Got it.
We're there.
Thank you.
All right. Now it would be super awesome if I could advance it. So, okay, so I'll warn you that at Highland, we don't use Zoom, so everything is not compatible with Zoom that I'm using, but at the county, we use it. I typically have somebody that's doing it for me there, so I'll do my best here. So let's start with the backdrop with which the county had to manage the process of changing impact fees. There was a new legislation that was signed by the governor in June of 2021. And the backdrop to that is that there were some actors within the state that didn't raise fees for a very long time and then raised them excessively. There were, I guess, a few that possibly raised them excessively more often than that. So there was a need perceived at the state level to say, we got to get a handle on this. It's not good. And there was some legislation that was passed, which I think was all pretty strong legislation. We fortunately had started the process of updating our impact fees before the legislation, which enabled us to make the change anyway. Had we not, we probably would have been delayed in our ability to do that. But the requirements are a demonstrated need study, so you would want that anyway, quite frankly, and the fact that that had to be legislated is a little bit alarming to me as a new local elected official. 2 publicly noticed workshops and a 2/3 vote of the governing body. So the impact fees in Seminole County come in 4 areas: fire and rescue, library, water and wastewater, and a mobility fee. And the only one of those that is a tad confusing by label is mobility fee, but the mobility fee is really a developer impact fee is the easiest way to think about it. The rest are very straightforward. We had to prove extraordinary circumstances necessitating impact fee increases because some of our impact fees are increasing by more than 50%. And I'm going to stop there and go to the second bullet and say, and I can't really fathom this, to be honest with you, that some of our impact fees have not been changed since the early 90s. We looked at them in 1995 and decided to keep the 1990 schedule. I find that to be, can you imagine running the chamber with dues from 1990? Can you imagine running Disney with entry fees from 1990? I mean, it's just not reality based. So the revenue has to come from somewhere, right? Because the impact is real, the community has grown. So the revenue is really being shouldered by the taxpayer as opposed to where it should be coming. So that's the piece of it that I found a little bit surprising. And even this time passing it, there was debate as to whether or not it should be changed. So that was very interesting. So some of the reasons for our extenuating circumstances, we are 13th out of 67 counties in terms of population. We've had an additional 110,000 new residents that are anticipated through 2045. We're 17th in absolute population growth, 25th in annual population growth, and 23rd in residential permitting. So we're in the top third, roughly, of the state for growth. And that means that impact is real on existing citizens. So we have a couple options when you need additional infrastructure, and that's growth pays for its share, existing population subsidizing it, or the level of service degrades. And there's really, right, it's the water balloon, it's classic, it squeezes back and forth. And where we've been is that we haven't seen services degrade, although I will tell you that we run a very, very lean operation. We've seen employee satisfaction degrade. We've seen employee turnover that might not be the greatest thing for the citizens because we've stressed the organization. But most importantly, our current taxpayers are shouldering the growth burden. So, you know, some of the issues that we face when you do that is, are our property taxes affordable, and how do they rank with other areas? And quite honestly, it's just not fair. I mean, just not fair. So that's where we were. I'll cut to the very end so you know where we ended up, because all of that buildup would lead you to believe that we went crazy with our impact fees, and we did not. Where we're the green bar, where we are currently, or were currently prior to this, is, you know, pretty close to the bottom. And where we're moving to is into the top third. Now, the important thing to realize about this chart in its entirety is that some of these will be jumping in front of us because they're doing updates as well. Some of these have also not been updated. We think that where we'll end up is about the middle of the pack, and we think that it will probably glide fairly quickly from the middle to the bottom third because of the growth in Florida. This gives you a little bit of an idea of where we fall in the pack compared to the surrounding areas. And we picked surrounding areas that abut to Seminole County in some meaningful way. I honestly asked that Osceola be included because there are similarities there to us being a bedroom communities to the greater Orlando area. So you can see that we fall somewhere in the middle, not to the extreme, which is exactly where we want it to be. Fire and rescue impact fee. The need here is as we are growing, we have to put up additional stations, or response time is too slow. And I won't say too slow, so I'll recategorize that. Response time is not fast enough, as fast as we would like it. So, and the cost is fairly exorbitant in terms of what you would build as fire station for. I think as business people, we would all know that. I think the community would not necessarily understand these numbers, but we have 3 stations that are in play as we speak. And if you look at what we do, we incur debt to pay for a station. If we keep the current fee, it's 18 years to repay the debt, so we're paying interest well beyond the years. If we do this, then we can retire the debt much sooner, better for the citizens. Current fee is generating about $420 per year, and we're looking to move it to about $950. Very, very quick math there. I realize this is not the most enticing topic, so I am going to try to go fairly quickly. The library impact fee is interesting because this has very mixed emotions, because there's a portion of our community that says, libraries, aren't outdated? You know, I just go to Google and Amazon. But our libraries are used fairly effectively, and often used by the most vulnerable population. So making sure that we keep library access in play is important, and not only keeping it in play, but keeping it effectively in play. And so the checkout wait of 60 days is not really acceptable, but that's about where we are in Seminole County. There is a need for new materials, and a lot of the materials that we purchase today are electronic, but as board member Calderon knows, just because we took the paper out of the equation doesn't mean we took the cost out of the equation. So that's very interesting. You would think it would go way, way down, but that's not the reality. So the current impact fee generates about $120,000 per year. So every year we get behind on what we're trying to add to the libraries in order to keep pace with growth. And the updated moves from 350, updated is in a range of 350 to 500. And quite honestly, taxpayers have been subsidizing this all along. Wastewater is the most interesting, so very, very similar. I'll cut to the bottom bullet on this one. Right now, taxpayers are subsidizing about $2.5 million per year in order to keep pace with the growth in the county, and that has steadily grown over time. And even with the change to the impact fee, our wastewater revenues are running in deficit spending, and so we just voted to increase them by a small percentage to keep pace. I am Now, we all know what I do for Highland, right? I'm in the employee benefits business. So I have always been an advocate of keeping cost in pace with reality as opposed to trying to artificially hold them low and then taking a baseball bat upside the head of the end user with a giant increase because we've kicked the can down the road. And that is what we did this year. The mobility fee is the most complicated one. And the reason for that is because in addition to changing the actual cost, we changed the structure by which it's analyzed. And that is important. Our old structure, our current fee prior to our change, absolutely did not reflect what is expected in impact fees. So we've moved to a mobility fee type of calculation so that the impact of a new development is more equally assessed in terms of cost for the cost that they're going to put into the system by virtue of that new development. And so this was a fairly lengthy conversation around how do we do that. So in addition to it being not structured appropriately, it was not funded appropriately. So we have, this is the ultimate Rubik's Cube, right? The current fee, this one was developed in 1990, which is amazing. It was reviewed in 1995. As I said, decided to keep it at the 1990 rate, which at that time may have made absolute perfect sense. There were, you know, as was explained to one of the senior commissioners, there were downturns in economy along the way. I was very honest when I was on the dais that there were also upturns in the economy along the way. So the fact that we have to do this to this degree today, I hope we would never repeat that. And there was a conversation when it came to vote that the data that we used for the current study was a few years old, which that happens when you do a study. You put a point in time, you do a study, you look back. Some of the data that we're using is for a full decade, and that perhaps we should delay this decision in order to get updated data. And my comment to that was, if I do the same math to the 1990 data, then we may have been using data from the year I may or may not have been at my prom. There's no way we can kick this can down the road. So it was a unanimous vote to move forward with this. So now we have everybody guessing when I was at prom. And I said may or may not have because I actually didn't go to my senior prom. The current fee does not utilize trip lengths. And this is important because trip lengths have an impact to roads, right? And so I'll cut to the chase on that. And that is that meant that everyone paid the same fee. So if you're building in a very urban area, I'll use Lake Mary, the county portion of Lake Mary, all pretty urban, same with the Sanford portion, different from Geneva. You build a home in Geneva, you're driving to Publix, you're driving for the most part to work. So your impact is different. So the fees, the mobility fee that we voted for is much higher in the urban area or much higher in the rural area than it is in the urban area. And that's the newest methodology that's being used around the state. I honestly went into it thinking the folks that want to protect the urban area would be delighted about that, but we got a significant amount of pushback from some landowners out there that didn't feel that that was appropriate or fair. The feedback for it was much more voluminous, so that I think that was a good thing in terms of making us sort of reconciling that we're doing the right thing. We did have Citizens Advisories Committee on all of this. There were 3 different meetings over the course of 2 months, and there was some very specific feedback. The proposed fire impact fee rate for fast food restaurants was too high. That was an education issue. Impact fees, and of course, you know, we had a various representatives on the board. There were realtors on the board. Impact fees will increase housing affordability as it gets passed on to the end user. We did address that by keeping an affordable housing component to this, but we did not feel that the end impact to the housing in our market would make it unaffordable or uncompetitive from my business perspective with other surrounding communities. That fourth bullet down was really important, and that is they really encouraged regular review. And this group included developers, regular review and updates, because they, quite honestly, you're running a business and you're always sitting back and you're pricing product and you're sitting back and waiting when the hammer's going to fall. Not a good position to be in. And you can't predict what the grandfathering rules will be around your projects. So that was really important for us to hear. Obviously supportive of the impact fees for fire. You pretty much don't get negative feedback about fire impact fees, particularly in a community where we're building higher buildings now. We regularly are putting up 3-story apartment buildings. I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on that conversation because that is a whole nother conversation. But we need to have ladder trucks in the surrounding fire stations that can easily address an issue in those buildings. 30-year, and I already mentioned this, but we look at anything that's willing, any house or dwelling that's willing to put a 30-year affordability period on that unit has an impact fee waiver. So that's addressing the affordable. So for example, if Habitat for Humanity comes out and builds a house, they're not going to have an impact fee compared to the impact fees that happen when MI Homes come out and build a home. And I think that's important. We did consider a workforce housing definition. So pretty much all of the impact that they gave us, we did consider. The last one there is they recommend using square feet tiering instead of number of bedrooms. And so we tried to reconcile between the fees what the methodology was going to be and tried to keep them consistent. This is the impact of the accumulative fee, and probably the easiest area to go is, so I think this is interesting. When I saw this slide, I thought, oh, I'm in government now, because the answer is always in the bottom right-hand side of a spreadsheet, right? For my accounting friend out there, let's go to the bottom right-hand. Ours is on the bottom left. But the difference is about $5,000 on a general residential example, and non-residential is really about $5,000. And that non-residential impact is why we had to go through the substantiation of extraordinary circumstances. We wouldn't have had to go through it if that was lower. But our commercial development is much more significant than it's been in the past. We felt it was worth the effort, and I give the county manager and her team credit for pursuing through that. So with that, I'll stop to answer questions, and I will see if I can stop sharing my screen. So, well, I'm going to hold off and see what the questions are, because I may need to revert back to, I have several more slides in the appendix if we need them, so.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. It was very informative. I obviously really appreciate the consideration the county is taking on wastewater fees. You know, the county's slogan is Florida's natural choice. We need to protect that. So continuing to invest in wastewater to be able to keep the infrastructure up and keep up with the environmental needs of the area is critical.
I appreciate that. Are there any questions?
Hey, Andrea. Alan here. Just a quick question. As it relates to the mobility fee, is that fee the same thing as the transportation impact fee, or is that a completely different fee? I'm just looking at the financial statements, and it talks about how the transportation impact fee is going to sunset on December 31st of 2021, but I wasn't clear whether that was the same thing or a completely different fee.
So I'm the newest commissioner, so I disclose a lot. I disclose often that I may be giving you the wrong answer, but I believe this is a replacement to that fee.
Okay.
I just also wanted to say I love funding for the library, so keep it up.
It's amazing when you see the usage numbers for the libraries, it's pretty high. Lots of senior citizens, lots of folks that are bringing kids in there to access reliable internet, et cetera. It's really kind of heartwarming. I'll own the fact that I'm not a library user. So that was a really good education for me around the impact that has on the community.
Yeah, I know, at least from my perspective, libraries are especially helpful with young kids because they just, like, my kids chew through books so fast because the books are, relatively short, that having a library and having a lot of books quickly accessible is a great benefit.
Yeah, and I'm on the other side of that. My kids are 27 and 21. I don't want to know what they're reading.
Lisa, do you have a question?
No, I just wanted to add to that now, adults are also checking out digital books and digital information from libraries. So it's something that we do need to continue to invest in. So thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner.
Yep. So I've been looking on this screen for the stop sharing button, and it's actually on the screen that's got the slideshow on it, which makes all the sense in the world.
Any other questions while we have the commissioner? Well, thank you very much, Commissioner. Really appreciate your time this morning. It's been very informative to learn about impact fees and kind of the reason for the changes and the way things are headed. Certainly, folks will give you plenty of feedback, I'm sure, on impact fee increases. But when you have the information, you have the context of how long it's actually been and the needs of the county and trying to meet those needs, it's really helpful to know.
Yeah, we're elected to make hard decisions, not popular decisions. And so that's really, really important to me to.
Absolutely right.
I don't know what that meant, Ben, but is that okay? Yeah. This isn't about the next election. So this is about making sure that we're doing the best we can possibly do for the community at all times. And some of the decisions are extremely hard. When I leave here later this morning, I'm going out to a site that was woods a week or two ago. And the community is heartbroken because it's all been clear cut because there's an apartment complex going up there and there's all sorts of accusations that are happening around the builder didn't follow the development order. So I have the development order in hand. I have a pair of boots to go on with my golf skirt. Really hope no one's out there taking pictures, and a tape measure, because you know what? We're not going to be the community that gets to throw accusations back and forth without them being validated. And so if I can sort of tone down that rhetoric, maybe we can start to make good decisions together about how we do put up an apartment complex and maintain a couple of trees. So it's a very, very interesting role, but it's around creating healthy dialogue. So I appreciate you guys having me here. I'll come back anytime you want me to speak about something. I'll always give you the disclaimer that I don't have 20 years in this role. So I gave you handouts. The information in those handouts is spot on. And that's really important. So there is a frequently asked question in there. If you guys are getting questions, let me know. I'll get you whatever information you have. And we'll go from there. And I appreciate all you guys serving.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you. Bye-bye.